Hi, I'm Nick Cosentino, and I'm a Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft. In this video interview, I was joined by Amer Tadayon, who is the founder and CEO of Lucihub. Now, I love interviews like this because I think it's such a cool opportunity to see people's different career journeys. And people often go in one direction, and along the way, they're finding that they want to be heading in another one. And the best part about this is when it all comes together and someone's able to take their different strengths, skills, and interests and build something cool for themselves. Now, I think that you're really going to enjoy this one. Amer has lots of really interesting insights. So sit back, enjoy, and I will see you next time. To kick things off, if you'd like, I would love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear sort of the story of, and you can start however early you would like to, but like however you want to kick things off into like your journey into where you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it's so kind of an interesting story, and it started back in high school for me. I'm a musician. I thought I was going to go to Juilliard and be a session musician,
I was not expecting this at all, by the way.
right? And actually, I live in Vegas and I do play professionally. But what happened was there are a couple of things happened. The movie Top Gun came out, which really got me into aviation and things. But then I also played football, and I bought a computer from a guy off the football team. It was a Mac. What was it? A Mac Plus.
Okay.
And I started using that, and I was using just basic apps like PageMaker to do desktop publishing and stuff. And I went into college, and I actually got a job from a college baseball team. I would do their newsletters, and I'm like, this is really interesting. And as part of the or the engineering courses, I started taking computer science, and that was kind of the moment for me where I realized, oh my God, you could literally come up with an idea
Mm.
and deploy it, right? And
Yeah.
so that that idea of being able to create anything you want really got my attention. And I was doing better in my minor, which was computer science, than I was in my major, which was aero engineering. But I was doing bad at all of them, honestly. I was at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo and just getting my ass kicked. And so I ended up transferring back up to the Bay Area, which is where I'm from, San Francisco Bay Area. And one of the courses I took was a user experience course. And that was just, to me, that was like, wow, making things simple is actually a lot of work. And so I
Yeah.
ended up getting an information systems degree. But what was really interesting to me was how you could apply technology to solve problems. And
Right.
that's what kicked it off for me. So I would tell everybody I'm a failed engineer who turned into a pretty good product guy uh, because of varied backgrounds. But that's how I got into software and engineering.
Awesome. Yeah. So basically, you had an interest in the engineering direction, but it started to pick up on like the software pieces were really the interesting part for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a good coder. We at Cal Poly back then, you went to this lab to do all your work, and we used AIX to do your work. It was a form of Unix. I would The guys around me would be done within
Mm.
an hour, and I would be there all night working on this project. And so at one point, I just had this talk with myself, like, you're really not good at this. You might like it, but maybe there's other things you can do to apply this. And that's kind of how I ended up in MIS and user experience design and all of that. And
Right.
it was a better path for me. It was, but that was it. And look, the company I have now, Lucihub, we're an AI powered video production platform, and we have, out of our 20 employees, 10 of them are the product team. So I'm still playing with tech, all
Right.
these years later.
Right. Yeah. And it's sort of applying your skills, interests in different ways that really enable you to be effective in that setting. Right.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what's really cool. I'll talk to somebody who knows nothing about tech.
Mm.
I've got this idea. I go, well, we can build that. He goes, we can. And I can't tell you that how many times people throw this challenge at me where, yeah, we could do that. And because as software developers, you build pretty much anything,
Yeah.
right? So that's what's exciting for me, is just coming up with an idea, pulling a team together, and saying let's have at it.
Right. Yeah. Like there's got to be a way, right? Like it's like we got to figure out what the constraints are. We got to figure out what the goals are. But like if we put our heads together, there must be a way, like in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
capacity.
And I
So
and I actually think engineers have a leg up on most people when it comes to this idea of anything is possible,
mm,
because most people in life don't think that way. They think, oh well, God, that's going to be just such a daunting task. I wouldn't even know where to start. But engineers, we're always creating stuff, right? So I think there's a leg up for an engineer on if they really want to go do some great stuff in the world. They're not going to have the fear most people have.
Interesting. No, that's a very I think a good perspective. I'm curious, and maybe this will be helpful for the people watching. The When you're going through your schooling and kind of having this realization, so you gone in for, you said was it
Yeah, aero
aerospace,
engineering.
aero
Yeah.
engineering, and then having this realization that your minor was the more interesting part, and then on top of that, like more UX. Did you did you finish school in the same program, or did you kind of switch gears and adjust, or like what did that look like for you?
I changed. So first of all, true story. My advisor at Cal Poly is like, "Hey, if you want to stay in this aero program, you're going to be here for 8 years if we don't kick you out." And so they actually put me on academic probation and said, "You have a quarter to get your act together." And I just said, "I'm just going to leave now," and
Mm,
I left. And I went to University of San Francisco and I got an MIS degree. But my path was a little different because I decided uh, I also worked for Apple when I was in college, and
okay,
that was a much more fun job for me. That was marketing, and so I was talking to a friend of mine and a colleague, and he said, you spend all your time in all the other classes just working on your work stuff. Why don't you just go do something else? So I actually took a different path. I went to night school
mm,
and I started going to school part time, and I went and got a full time job in the software industry. And what was really cool about that was I was able to apply the problems at my job to my classes.
very
And
cool.
so my senior project in college was I actually redesigned the UX of a piece of software I was selling for the company I was working for. And I presented it to the CTO, and they ended up incorporating it into the product. And that was my senior project.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, it's I wanted to ask about that because again, I think that I was kind of telling you before we started recording, right? That like everyone's going to have a different journey, and I think for a lot of people that are kind of looking at software development, they're going like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not sure if I'm cut out for this. I don't know if I should ever be in this industry because it seems like if they didn't start, from the moment they were born and they knew they wanted to be a software developer or be in the space, they're like, well, I guess I'm not cut out for it. But it's just not true, right? There's so many different paths.
And I'll tell you my experience. Some of the best developers I've worked with didn't start as developers. They started in another industry altogether, another domain altogether,
Hmm.
and then they moved into it. And what's really interesting about that is they get to apply a different lens to software engineering, as opposed to somebody who actually went through school to do this and then
Right.
get into it. But yeah, I've got a few guys who it wasn't their first thing, but boy, are they amazing engineers,
Right.
and it's probably because they've got a different lens that they look at it through.
Yeah, I love that. The more it's interesting, the more people I talk to, the more people that kind of are able to share an experience like that where they're like, hey, either for themselves or people that they work with, where they can say, this person didn't start off totally that way as a programmer or whatever. Um, Being able to bring different experiences in. I like to talk about more soft skills and things like that with my audience and remind them, like, by the way, like, there's other things outside of just code that really enable you to be a better engineer.
I'm really glad to hear that because I'm the same way. Even as a business owner, soft skills are equally as important, if not more important. Look, you can get great engineers, but can you get great engineers that communicate?
Yeah.
Right? Can you get great engineers that can work in a team?
Yeah.
No. So, uh, can you get great engineers that know how to lead?
Right.
So, I think those skills are even more important than just being the engineers. Okay, you've figured out your craft. You figured out what you're going to do. Can you put everything else around it so you could actually be successful more than everybody else?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that because I think sometimes when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm like, okay, like if my audience realizes I'm an engineering manager, they're saying, oh, it's you're just saying that because like you're biased in your role, you're whatever it happens to be. But um, being able to have other people come on and say like obviously the technical skills are important. I don't think anyone's gonna say no to that, but if you have the technical skills and you can't work together with other people, then like your efficiency as a team is basically not there. So,
Yeah. No, I think, and it's interesting. That's where when I talk to people and they say, "What should I work on?"
mm,
first thing I say is work on your communication skills. Right? You could be the best at anything, but if you can't communicate, that it doesn't matter. If you can't if you can't function as a team, you're never going to get further than just being on your own, and you don't get very far being on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. There was something I like someone had a post on social media recently and it was essentially around this where it's like your technical skills could be at, like A tier, and if your communication skills are at D tier, guess what? Like the world will perceive your technical skills at D tier. You're
Yeah.
unable to kind of,
Mhm.
broadcast that to the rest.
That's so there's social media is interesting because it's brought up all these experts, right?
Mm,
And it's not that they know anything, it's how they communicate everything that gets people to think that they're experts. Now,
right.
there are a lot of experts out there, but there are more people who or want to be experts than actual what I would consider an expert out there. And they have all these followers. It's because of the way they communicate. They
That's right.
not what they're saying, it's how they're saying that's winning people over.
Right. Which is a very interesting point, right? Because I think that really demonstrates like how powerful communication skills are,
Yeah.
because you like we're now inverting it, right, to say like, hey, look, and obviously, like, as someone who's creating content on social media, someone might say, hey, Nick, is that you? Like, you're the person who doesn't know anything. I'd like to think I know a couple things, but you could have someone who truly, and we see this a lot on social media, you might have someone who's even very new to their craft, their space, and they happen to have a very good ability to be able to communicate, to present themselves online, and as a result, because of the effectiveness of that, they amass a lot of people that are very interested in what they're saying. Now, you would hope, and we all want that person to be an expert, to be giving good information, but it can be a little bit, I don't know if I want to say dangerous, maybe that's too extreme, but like it can be a little dangerous if someone's just saying stuff that's not helpful.
I'd argue they could be a lot dangerous. Right? Misinformation is really a thing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love that you're sharing soft skills on this program because I think it's incredibly important and not enough people talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for you, after going through school and kind of shifting gears, right? You were saying that even in your senior project, you were able to have something that was useful for work. I think that's awesome. What was the next step after that? So you're already working and going through like night school, have your project delivered. Like what happens after that point for you?
So what I did was I needed to make money. I was in my 20s. I was putting myself through school. If you look at all the jobs in a company, the most in demand usually is sales because you turn through salespeople. So I interviewed for a sales job, and it
Mm,
just happened to be a technical sales job, and I was technical, so I was really good at selling the product and pitching the head of sales, and so I got a sales job, and I did well at it, but I really wanted to be a product manager.
okay.
Well, I worked for 4 years while I was finishing this degree, so I was on the 7 year plan regardless. But by the time I got my degree and I went to get a product management job, like the compensation was so far off because I was really doing well as a salesperson. And I had a certain quality or level of the way I was living. I'm like, geez, I got to take a 50% pay cut to get this job.
Okay.
And and so I said, well, what if I just go start my own company and then I can be a product manager and I can be the sales guy and maybe that'll work out better. And that was a disaster, but that's what I did. That's literally what I did instead of getting a product manager job.
So
And
if you don't mind me asking, so I think the rationale makes sense, right? Like to be able to say, like, this is a skill set I have that's earning money for me, and your standard of living is at some level, and like, so totally makes sense. And then being able to say, this is what I want to go do. What like to me, when you say that, there's still a bit of a leap of faith that I'm hearing that you're taking, where it's like,
yeah,
I still am going to leave the, I call it like the cushy, whatever the
yeah.
salary happens to be for your standard of living. You still have to take that leap of faith to go do something else. If you don't mind me asking, like, did you have to do a lot of work to convince yourself for that leap? Like, what did that process look like? Because I think that's I don't know. I feel like some people are very, I don't know, open to that, where they're like, that's exciting. I'm going to go do it. And for people like me, I'm like, that's terrifying. Like,
Yeah, it is terrifying. I'll tell you what it was for me, and I think honestly, I think you got to be wired a little differently. Two things for me. One is, sales is very tactical. You
Mm,
go from one deal, and I really wanted to build stuff like where I really am happy is when I'm exploring curiosity of ideas.
right.
I wasn't really doing that in sales. Sales for me was kind of a means to an end. I had to pay my bills. I knew that if there's the one job where there's no cap on how much you can make, it's sales. And even today, Nick, I was in a room full of entrepreneurs, and I said, "How many of you are here because you think you're going to start a business and make a lot of money?" Bunch of people raised their hands, and I said, "You should leave. You should go get a sales job because you'll make a lot more money in the next 3 years as a salesperson if you're good at it and you're
Right.
committed to it than you will as an entrepreneur, especially in the tech sector, man." I don't think people realize you have a 10% chance of success as a tech entrepreneur. Think
I'm
about that,
actually
right?
surprised it's that high. I would have assumed it was a lot less.
It's about there, right? And so ignorance is bliss. I didn't realize it. I believed in myself and I said, God, no one's going to make me a product manager and pay me what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go build my own product.
Right.
I'm going to become the product manager and I'm going to be the sales guy and I'm going to see where it goes. And it was going really well until the dot-com bust and then everything blew up and I had to start all over again. But you know what? I learned how to deliver a product and I was pretty good at it. And so I ultimately ended up getting a job running a products team through that route. It was an
Interesting. So
expensive route, but
for that business that you had then, like, was it primarily like and sorry, I'm gonna use the word failure here. Was it a failure in your eyes because of the dot com boom, like a boom bust kind of scenario, or
yeah,
is that
no,
just
it was, timing really is important. I used to not believe that, but timing is everything. It really
sure?
is. You can have the best product, but if just one or two things don't go your way, they say it's product, timing, and a little bit of luck. If things just don't go your way, they don't go your way. And what people don't realize is the number one reason businesses fail is their lack of capital.
Mm,
You have to be able to sustain, and we couldn't sustain through the bust. But the product, and this is a theme that I keep going back to over my career, is I took a low tech business and I applied technology to it.
mm.
And today I've taken a low tech business and applied technology to it, and that's kind of been my thing through my career.
Interesting. No, no, that makes a lot of sense, right? So it's not necessarily, it was a totally wild idea that like wasn't going to stick, but it was really like going through that period of time. I mean, it's very understandable that if there's a downward trend and like, okay, we just gotta survive for a little bit. If you're unable to, then that could just be the end of something, right?
Yeah, and it's a bummer because a lot of great businesses have gone down just because they weren't able to get capitalized. And it's interesting because you need investors, but a lot of investors don't really get your vision. They're betting on you. I mean, this company, I'm really lucky. I have a group of investors that are just awesome, and some of them see the vision. Some of them are just said, "Hey, you're determined, and we're going to put our money behind you." Right?
I have
Uh,
heard this. I have never been in a situation where I have, sought out investors. So this is just sort of things that I believe that I've heard or seen on YouTube videos and from a little bit of research. But hearing that a lot of the time, uh, especially like I call the more successful investors are actually not just saying, let's go find some technology that's interesting, but more like like we actually, as investors, we expect people will fail, but like the people that keep doing it, like, and keep being determined, like those are the people we want to bet our money on.
Yeah, and the first company I started, that one that I left to start way back when, I'll never forget being in front of an investor who he said, "I really like you. Come back to me on the second venture." He knew I was going to fail. Right? This was my first business. I was 20 something years old. He knew it was the risk was much greater than because you've got a 10% chance of failure, but then be a first time entrepreneur. That's all of a sudden amplified.
Sure.
So now you
Yeah.
probably got, or I'm sorry, 10% chance of success. Now you probably got a 2% chance of success.
Right.
And he knew it. And by the way, there's no substitute for experience, man. I can't tell you how many lessons I learned. Call them failures. I call them lessons.
Yeah.
Um,
This is
and
a like a theme as well, like what especially for my audience and stuff when I talk about even just learning how to program, how to be a software developer in general. You said it, there's no substitute for experience, right? So people will message in and say like, hey, like I want to get into this, like
what's the best programming language to learn, where, like, just tell me how to, like, how I get a job. And it's like, start building stuff. Like,
Just build stuff.
just keep building. Like, you have to be doing it. Now, like, I'll put out video tutorials and articles and stuff, but these are supplementary things. Like, I would really hope that someone wouldn't come to my content as an example and say, if I just watch all of Nick's stuff, I will be an expert. Like, absolutely not. Like, that's a supplement, and I would hope that you can leverage it to unblock yourself, get insights, but you need to be doing the things.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Just do it. Just go out and do it, even if it doesn't work, right? Even if it doesn't work, take a calculated risk. Try something. I started 3 products while I was in college. They all failed, by the way. They all failed. It was interesting. It was back in the day when the Newton was Apple's big PDA, and we tried books on Newton. We tried all kinds of things. My buddy and I, we just kept trying and failing. But you know what? We put it out there, and we learned so much about even just rejection. Getting
Right.
getting rejected a million times is a good thing because it builds thick skin. You know.
So that's maybe a really good point to kind of jump into, is the rejection part. And I selfishly want to hear more about this because I personally struggle with this as someone. Even if I'm putting stuff together, like, outside of work, I'm trying to put together a product and service, and I have failed at my previous attempt at doing this because of a fear of rejection. And when I've talked about this before, like, I've said this on recorded video and probably live, I actually think that some of this even stems back to, like, being a, like a young guy in, like, high school, and, like, wanting to ask a girl out on a date and stuff, and just being so afraid of rejection that like, I will self-sabotage, right? It's like
Yeah.
the fear of being rejected is so great that I refuse to even to do anything.
So
So
I'll tell you this. One of the best things anybody can do early on in their career is go get a sales job. Get used to getting no told to you a million times a day, because it makes you realize it's not necessarily you, it's the product.
sure.
So when I had my sales job, I turned it into a game. I would take that call and I would try to make everything better. Every time I made a call, I'd say, how many ums did I have? Did I pitch this clearly? Can I pitch this differently? I would almost do my own form of A B testing. I'd have one script and I'd talk about the product this way, and then I'd talk about the product this way. So I used all of that as a learning tool. I had to call 100 people a day, and and now I was selling business to business, so the rejection wasn't as bad as consumer products. But you learn that it's not you that they're rejecting. It's maybe they're not interested for a million reasons. It might be budget, it might be timing, it might be whatever. Um, but you learn that. The other thing I'll tell you is it does stem back to our childhood, and unless you go to therapy, you're not going to figure that out. So find a good therapist. But uh, nowadays, for me, rejection is redirection. It's like, okay, if this door didn't open, I got to go find another door, and there's probably a better door there. And I can't tell you how many times that's actually been the case. I've walked away from investors because we can get into good money and bad money too, but and that hasn't worked out, but something better has come up. So nowadays, for me, rejection is redirection. Okay, that door isn't there. Do I really want to beat it open? I might go back 1 or 2 times, but I'm probably going to go somewhere else and just find the path of least resistance. Early on in my career, it wasn't that way. I would beat the same door over and over and over and over again, and go, well, they're
Interesting.
gonna. And you take a step back and you say, okay, well, maybe that's the universe telling you that it's not the right door. So go find the right door. So when
Right.
you take that approach to rejection, it doesn't hurt nearly as much.
Yeah, but I think, like, a fundamental thing you're saying that I have heard before, and I mean, there's, like you already said, there's not going to be a better replacement other than experience doing it. Is, like, you have to get rejected. So I've, it's kind of funny. I've even said this for public speaking and stuff. Like, I'm a very introverted person, and people will be like, "Well, how is that possible? You're making YouTube videos and stuff." I'm like, yeah, but, like, I had to force myself to go do it. I can remember turning on a camera and going to record a YouTube video and just sitting here and being like, blah, blah. Like, I don't even have other people that are watching this yet. And I'm like, I can't even speak in this dark room alone just because I know that the possibility of someone watching this exists. So I had to just keep doing it. And now I can, turn on a camera and talk and doesn't matter.
So by the way, I'm the same way. The only place I was ever comfortable was behind a drum set. You can put me behind a drum set and I'll play in front of thousands of people. I don't care. But getting on stage was a thing for me. Having these conversations was a thing for me. And one of my coaches says, you're a mantra guy. Well, one of my mantras is learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You talked to Jennifer. I said, Jennifer, I need to start getting on podcasts and just get more comfortable with this. I need to have more speaking engagements. So
Right.
all of this for me started a year ago because I intentionally said, I've got to be the face of this company and I've got to be a better face. So I got to get more comfortable at this.
Right.
Again, it goes back to experience, right? Just do it.
Yep.
Just do it.
Now, this is a bit of a tangent, but related to this idea of failing that I wanted to bring up, especially for like probably some of the core audience here. Is I imagine that especially given the job market, there's probably a lot of people that will watch this and they're like, I'm trying to get my first job or I'm trying to switch jobs to get into tech, and like, I applied, I ended up getting an interview and I got rejected, and now like it's almost like this downward spiral thing. Like they're going to get down on themselves. Like, maybe it's not for me. I got rejected. I didn't even get told why. And, but I think it's a good reminder to be like, yeah, like it's unfortunately going to be part of the process.
You know what I tell my team? Let's get the no's out of the way. That's what I tell my team. Whether we're raising capital, closing a deal, whatever it is, let's get the no's out of the way so we can get to the yes. If anyone thinks they're going to do one interview and they're going to get a job, they're misguided or misled.
Yeah, and it takes, and I like that you said earlier too, especially like from a sales perspective, right? It can be easy, especially for like an interview, to be like, oh, they rejected, like they said no because like I must be so bad or something. It's definitely me. But something I've tried to remind people too is, say for a given job position, say there's 10 candidates. Let's say that you are an absolutely amazing candidate. There could be, on that given day they're interviewing people, there could be one other candidate that happens to also be very amazing, and there was something that stood out a little bit more, and that should not diminish that you could be a very amazing candidate. It's just for that role, you happen to not get it.
You know what it's like? There are years where when you go to the Academy Awards, you've got like 10 great movies and they could all win the Academy Award, but only one wins because that year, those 10 were all on that year. Now, if those 10 would have come out 10 different years, they all would have won an Academy Award.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, right? You might be really, really good. This guy might be really, really good, but you know what? They might be a better communicator.
Sure.
It's all those soft skills, right?
Yep.
They might have the domain knowledge that these people are looking for. You never know, but you can't take it personally. You just got to go until you find the fit.
Yep, exactly. So I thought that was thank you for calling it out, because when you had said that, I was like, hey, that's a really good reminder that sometimes it could be you, like, hey, you don't have the skills or whatever it happens to be, and let's go iterate on that, let's improve. But other times it could not be you at all, and that's, again, you can't take it personally. You have to keep going and trying.
And the other thing I'll tell you is, at the end of the day, whether you're a programmer, you're an HR person, when you go to an interview, you're selling yourself.
Right.
And the question is, how do you stand out? What do you do differently to stand out?
Right.
And that's important, right? To get somebody's attention. Literally, people don't realize when they're going to an interview, even before the interview, they're selling themselves. How are you going to sell yourself on that resume to stand out? Now,
Yep.
Most of these tools are literally looking for keywords and pulling things out, right? But how are you going to stand out? There are times where I've literally, I've reached out to somebody and shared a story, and that's gotten me the interview.
Right.
So
yeah. It's something different, right? I was talking about this recently from the perspective of, like, people will say, okay, as an aspiring software engineer, like, I keep hearing I need to build things. Well, what should I be building to put on my portfolio for my resume? And they're going like, I don't want to build another to-do app. I don't want to build another whatever. And what my recommendation has been is, like, there's nothing wrong with building those things to go get experience actually putting software together. I think it's totally fair. You can learn a ton. When it comes to, like, putting stuff on a resume, for me personally, and I'm not the one who's combing through all the resumes, so it's kind of difficult to give advice like this, but I like seeing stuff that is different, and I like seeing that even if you build a to-do app, tell me, like, I would love to see if you're like, I built this thing and then I wanted to extend it and I ran into these challenges and here's how I overcame them. And I just want to see that you're building software, because listing out one more to do app doesn't stand out.
So I'll tell you something I do with the businesses that I think any engineer can do with their career,
Awesome.
especially if they're starting out. When I start a company, I need some reference clients.
Right.
And 9 out of 10 times, I'll go to those reference clients and say, use our product for the next 12 months for free, the next 6, whatever. But I want to get a story. I want to get a story from you. When I was in college and I was a crappy programmer, I got together with a really good programmer and we built some products. And guess what? Those products ended up on my resume for a while because I didn't have anything else to point to. So I said, this is what I did. And I built this product, and I literally built them. And so I could talk about the challenges I ran into building them. What you could do in this day and age is you could go to a business and say, hey, I'm willing to volunteer X number of hours just to get some experience, and you get a free engineer. And here's my resume. The only thing I ask is that I get to talk about the work I do for you guys while I'm interviewing for other jobs. That's something everybody can do now. Whether or not the company brings you on is different, but small businesses, they need help and they don't have the capital.
Yep.
So if you're willing to donate your time, and by the way, I pivoted from technology into the film business halfway through my career. I knew nothing about film. I started taking classes. I started getting coaches, and I went to my brother who had a supplement company. I said, I'm willing to shoot your first 2 commercials for free. I shot 3 commercials for free, put my own time and money into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to put those on my resume as, hey, these are the things I've produced. These are the things I've directed. And it goes back to being the product manager. Nobody was going to hire me as a product manager without any experience. Nobody was going to hire me as a filmmaker when I'd spent 10 years in the software industry. So I had to figure out how to build that. And so it was time. I worked another job in software and I built a video business, but I did it with, sweat equity. And I think younger engineers could do the same thing. They could reach out to these companies, or they might have friends who's like, hey, I've got this idea. I want to build it. Don't expect anything but experience and a resume builder. Just go build it. Even if it doesn't work.
100%. Yeah, no, and I love that. Like the last part especially is like, if you can be collaborating with someone, and again, they don't have to be awesome. It doesn't matter. Like, I love that you said, just like, assume that all that you're going to get out of it is experience.
Yeah,
because that is still very valuable. I have heard people say, and by the way, I agree with what your advice was. I have heard people disagree with the advice of like volunteering your time, because they go, well, companies shouldn't be skimpy like that. They should be paying you for that. And I'm going like, so, sure, but here's the thing. You're going, I need experience. This is something that I need. And I'm just thinking about this like, you are going to say no to that concept because you deserve money, and like, you should get paid for doing work, sure, but they're paying you with that experience. There are other people that aren't you that are willing to go do that, and they're going to get that experience, and then you're going to go, well, it's not fair. It's not fair that they could do it. And it's like, but they're doing it. So
I'll tell you what, I see a lot of people online talk about know your worth, know your worth, know your worth. That's great. That's great. But if you need the job, or if you need the money, if you need the experience, you got to do what you got to do. It's like me as an entrepreneur. Well, I've built a handful of businesses. I've worked for some of the best companies in the world. My investors should be throwing money at me. It doesn't work that way. So when I hear this know your worth bullshit, it's like, yeah, you know your worth and you stand your ground when you need to, but you do what you need to get to where you need to as well.
Right.
And when you're starting out, it's really hard because all these resumes say 5+ experience, 5+, all these job descriptions, and you don't have it. So you have to go find it. So how do you find your worth when you don't have it? And I think, by the way, I had a lady come to me 7 years ago, getting back into the workforce. So we'll flip this, right? She hadn't worked. She was raising a family. She literally reached out and said, I'm willing to work for free just to get back into the workforce. And you know what we said? Well, we didn't really have an opening, but we needed help, but we couldn't afford to give her what she was worth. We gave her something. She's been working with me for 7 years now in 3 different companies, and she's the head of our AI product management right now. And she started with, basically, we called it a returnship. But to your point, we knew her worth. We couldn't afford to pay her worth. And here's the other thing that people who've never run a business or a P&L don't understand. it's not that we don't want to pay you. Sometimes we just can't afford to pay you. And if
Mhm.
you're willing to volunteer your services, great. Maybe we'll pay you in equity. Maybe we'll get you on the list for the next opening. Something to that effect. Something good will come out of it.
Right.
I have a real problem with people who have this self sense of entitlement and say, well, "No, you're worth." Well, yeah, you do. And it's funny because you hear that a lot about relationships, but when it comes to getting your career off the ground or changing careers, there's nowhere to go but up. So build your worth,
Yeah.
literally build your worth. It's not about what you're worth today. It's how do you build your worth? How do you build the value that people see in you? You got to start somewhere. So if people, the problem is there are a lot of jobs that'll pay you six figures out of college,
Sure.
but they're far and few in between. And not everybody gets that path. So go make your own path, man. Figure
Yeah.
it out.
And you're competing with, like, so you see that job that's offering all that money, like you can bet the competition's going to be high. Like that's what it is.
But I'll tell you what, I'd rather get somebody who is kicking and scratching to make their career go than somebody who just went to a great school, took the job and said, okay, this is what I'm doing. Because that person who's working 10 times harder to get there
Mhm.
ultimately is going to be more successful.
Yep, 100%. I have never run my own business. Like I built products and stuff on the side. I've never run my own business where I have to hire my own employees, but I've been an engineering manager for 12 years and I will say that my philosophy when hiring people is like I don't care if you could rhyme off like every single thing that you know. Like I don't care like the facts that you happen to know because we can go like anyone can go look it up. I want to know how you think, how you approach learning. I want to see that you're eager to learn. Like it's all these other things because if you happen to know a bunch of stuff today and you're not willing to learn and grow and adapt because that's what we're going to be doing as a team, then I'm hiring you for literally what you know right now and assuming that it's going to stay there. And that seems dangerous to me. So,
It is dangerous. I always have a saying, it's my own, it's how I live my life, but I tell my team, make sure you stay relevant.
yeah,
Embrace change and make sure you stay relevant. There are a lot of people in the business I have now, which is Lucihub. We have a lot of companies we go to work with because we're a different way to do production, right? We're tech plus people that are scared shitless of us,
mm,
and they just shut us out. We have a lot of companies where the production team has shut us out because instead of embracing it and saying, "Wow, we can get 3 times, 4 times, 10 times the output," they're saying, "Oh my God, now we're going to have to do things even faster, and it's going to make us look bad."
yeah.
And
Or
and
this might
so,
replace us, right? Like it's gonna, yeah.
and what's funny is we have one client that actually wanted us to work with their production team. Production said, "Absolutely not." They just displaced the production team and put us in, and we're the standard now at that company. And they lost all the business versus taking a hit on the business but keeping the client.
Right. Well, there's
So,
like a small segue here that I'll just mention that from prior to Microsoft, I worked at a digital forensics company, and what was really interesting, it's very similar to what you just said, was we had like basically a search engine that could recover data, and the traditional way of doing forensics was that you would go open up a hex editor, go through the hard drive, and people would be like, "Wait a second, you're gonna go automate doing that? Like that's scary. Like that's my job." But the people that really understood were like, that's the part of my job that I don't want to spend time doing. That's the like the low value part. Like my value is actually doing analysis, like using my brain, not like looking for, particular bytes. Like let a computer do that. So very interesting that you had a similar experience where some people were like, oh no, like that seems like that's gonna, put my job at risk.
well, and it's funny. My career, this company is connecting the dots between my software background, my film background, and my consulting background.
Right.
But times are changing, right?
Right.
The days of spending $100,000 on a video production and using it for a year are gone. You put content up now. You're building content right now, right? You put content up and it's irrelevant within a week or 2 weeks, and you got to put more content up. The problem is the way production companies do business hasn't changed. So
Right.
the demand has changed. That hasn't changed, and so there are a lot of them that are losing business to not just other firms, but different approaches, DIY approaches, internal approaches. And they just refuse, they still want those big checks instead of saying, well, I'm going to take smaller checks, but maybe more of them.
Right.
They still want those big checks. And they're going to really, really get hurt in the next 2 to 3 years in our
Because things
industry.
are they're changing, right? Well,
And it's
so
because of automation.
and maybe this is a really good segue because I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the business that you have now. So I love that you said you're kind of bridging some of these different areas that you focused on throughout your career and pulling them all together. So if you don't mind sharing some of the background behind it, like how did you get to realizing like, hey, I'm gonna pull these things together, or was that a side effect where you were like, I want to go build this thing and like coincidentally happens to align really well?
No, not at all, actually. So I started my career in software.
Right.
At some point, I started that company I was telling you about that, I decided I want to be my own product manager. Well, we had to film a commercial, and so I produced the commercial, and we hired a team, and we did. I really enjoyed it. So I left tech, and I became a filmmaker, and I started a digital studio, and we did a bunch of cool things. We sold the show to MTV. We did a bunch of stuff for major brands,
MTV.
and then the market crashed in 2008. And again, cash flow dictated it wasn't going to work. So I jumped ship and went into another company. But what happened was I ultimately started I think a fourth or fifth company. Was a consulting firm. So this was tech, UX, marketing, all of it. One of our clients went public. They acquired the company, and I had left after my earnout, and I was looking for the next thing to do, and I thought I was going to go make a record. And I was having lunch with an agency executive who said, we spend thousands of dollars on video production, and by the time we get the video back, it's irrelevant. The topic is gone. And that was the seed that got planted. I was on a Friday, and on Monday I started Lucihub. And over the weekend, I went down this rabbit hole and did a bunch of research. And I said, how is it that the demand for video content has just exploded,
Right.
and the process in which video production is done hasn't really moved forward much? And so, I put my tech hat on, and I started going down this rabbit hole and designing things and doing the diagrams and all that, and saying, if we applied these technologies to a group of really good editors, we could do things much faster and much better. And so the whole goal of Lucihub is video production quality at speed and scale. And I literally applied the principles we used in global software development to the industry, to the production industry. And then we took a bunch of AI tools and said, if we actually leverage these AI tools, we could accelerate a production cycle. And so when we started an editing project took us 4.5 hours. We do that same project in less than 90 minutes now. And this time next year, I'll be able to do it in less than 60 minutes. And it's scaring a lot of people because they're saying, well, you can't possibly do what we do in a fraction of the time. I'm like, yeah, we can, because you know that you talked about the going through the hex editor and all that.
Mm-hmm.
You spend a lot of the time doing this. We've automated that entire process. So this whole pre-production or this assembly process, we've kind of modified it.
Yeah.
And then we've taken it a step further. We've created a whole slew of AI tools. When we started the company, AI for us was machine learning and computer vision. Now you've got OpenAI, and you've got GPT, and you've got all this stuff. And so, and you're a Microsoft guy, so we had access to the Azure OpenAI framework, all the APIs. Right. So we decided, let's figure out how to accelerate our work internally, and we did. And then we're like, wow, we could actually add this to the product and help all of our customers go from idea to final. So now you can go on our platform, you can create a voiceover script, convert that script into a shot list, convert that script into a voiceover, convert it into a social media post if you want, push it into our cloud. You'll go film on your phone, you'll upload, and you'll have your content literally, depending on your subscription with us, anywhere from 72 hours to 2 hours. Most post houses just can't do that. And they can't do it at scale. Look, they can do it, right? A lot of people can do it.
Sure.
They can't do it at scale, which is what's really cool about our business.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Someone who's listening could be like, you know what? Like that could happen. And it's like, sure. But yeah, a one-off thing. If it was like, please, like,
we had a company call us last month. They were doing a big, it was a competition. It was some sort of competition. And they had to have 18 interviews filmed the night before and ready the following morning. The team they hired backed out and said, there's no way we can do this. They hired us, and we got 18 videos delivered in 16 hours for them. And that's the cool stuff for me as a techie, right? It's like, wow, this is actually working. This workflow is working the way we're, we upload content faster than the major clouds do.
Right.
And we had one big company come to us during a trade show asking for a demo. And I gave them the demo. I knew who they were. And they said, how are you uploading so quickly? And that's the fun part of tech for me, right? How do you optimize? How do you make these things work better than the other guys?
Yeah. It starts to make it look like magic to other people when you're doing things effectively, right? Because they're like, hold on, yes, I see the value prop, and then they start kind of thinking through it, and they're like, wait a second, like, wait, how, that seems impossible. Like, that's a really cool moment to be like, yeah,
Well,
it
Nick,
does seem
that was the
impossible.
company, the production company that didn't work with us that ended up losing the client. Their head of post said, I don't know how you're doing this. It's like magic. How is a professional edit being turned around so fast?
Right.
And so to your point, yeah, when you do it right, and that's for me, that's the fun of tech.
Yeah. That's
So
cool. I don't think what we were recording at the time, but something I wanted to touch on, especially for how you're like approaching the software development process. You had mentioned dog fooding, right? Your own
yeah,
product. And I realize this now in hindsight, but I know that some people actually don't know what dog fooding means. And I learned this a tricky way because I had employees in Mexico, and at work we always talk about dog fooding. We actually have like a ring of deployment that we call dog food. And after a little bit, like after months of these employees working for me, I remember that one of them said, "By the way, like what why is it dog food?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that like I don't know, like this phrase is not like a cross-cultural thing that people just
it's not. I
understand."
actually think I'm dating myself by using it because a lot of my team doesn't get it. But when we built this product, uh, I said we're going to use this product to do every video we create internally.
Right.
And this year alone, I think we've done 106 internal videos
Wow.
for ourselves using our platform.
Right.
And so it's really cool when people say, well, uh, give us an example. I go, we have a million examples. Go to the Lucihub Academy. We have a whole slew of micro learning videos. All of those are created using Lucihub, right? All of our marketing, all of our explainer videos inside the application are created using Lucihub. So we definitely do. I got to find a better term than eat our own dog
Yeah.
food, but we
I
definitely do.
that's the one that I'm familiar with, so I just remember hearing from my employees and I was like, "Oh man, like I didn't realize that it's like
Yeah,
the phrase doesn't carry over like that." So no, that's awesome. And I think that like I think that that's a really valuable way to go about things because obviously in software development getting feedback from customers is very important. We want to have short feedback loops so that we can get that basically a continuous feed of information. Are we on the right track? Do we need to pivot? Is the value actually being delivered? But when you can use it yourself, you basically get that as often as you want, right? And depending
yeah.
on the product or the service, that can really accelerate what's going on. So, do you do you find because one of the I don't want to say that people are necessarily against dog fooding stuff. I think most people are saying like this is a good thing, but I do think that there is a potential risk if the only thing you're doing is like, hey, we use this and it's awesome, and you're not balancing it with like, hey, these people will pay for it. Have you found that um like striking a balance between hey, we want this internally versus here's what customers are asking for is challenging, or does it feel very much aligned?
That's a really good question and a good point. Uh, as much as we eat our own dog food, we listen to the customers
Mm,
because they may have different use cases. They may have different, and they see it from a different lens.
right.
And we're dealing with that right now. There's a couple of things that have come up that were really far out on our roadmap that we're like, oh my God, we got to put this into like the next 2 or 3 sprints because it's going to cause problems with this particular client who's doing things this way.
Right.
So we make an effort to listen to the clients. At some point we'll have a customer advisory board where we'll actually run product ideas by them and do that. But right now we have a couple of really, really good power users who actually push us and give us really good ideas on the product. And one of the things I always tell my product team is like, don't build this stuff in a silo. Listen to the
Yeah.
customer. We were working on a feature this week, and I told the product manager, I said, call this customer and this customer because they're going to have some good feedback for you. Let's listen to what they have to say before we just decide this is the best way to do it.
Right.
And I think there's arguments on the other side, right? There's companies that say, no, we're going to tell the customers what they want because they don't know what they want. And I don't know how I feel about that, honestly. Um, I think at the end of the day, if you're going to sell something, at least listen to them and hear them out. They're going to give you good feedback.
Right. It's there's a couple of and I have a couple of questions here and thoughts, right? So I agree with your statement. I want to kind of say that up front before I kind of navigate some of this, but I have heard people say basically like we're almost like pioneering use cases, right? So like we're actually about to demonstrate to users like or potential users like something that they haven't yet considered. Like so therefore we actually need to show them. We need to direct them down this path. And then they hopefully, I mean, I guess the idea is that hopefully the users go, oh, that is a way better way of doing things. But I feel like that's like, I don't want to say that's impossible, but I feel like you're you're kind of setting yourself up to get over this really big barrier of like, how the hell are you gonna aha so many users by doing something that's completely different than they're expecting?
It's really hard. It's changing behavior. Changing
Yeah.
behavior is hard. It's one of the challenges we have at Lucihub. We have a great platform, but it's a different way of thinking about video production. And once that bulb goes off in the client's head,
Mm,
and they realize they don't have to spend $10,000 to get a project done, and all of a sudden, all these opportunities open up.
right.
And so, but it's been a long road because we're changing behavior. We're changing the way people think about video production and the fact that they don't need a huge camera. This is pretty darn powerful, you know. And so it's challenging, but that's also, you know, that's also that's also how you build something that you know is a game changer. When
Right.
you're scaring people or when you're having to educate them, you know that you're doing something different.
But you're able, in your case, you're able to have a value proposition that's so good that when people go, that's different. Oh, like our behavior has to change. Oh, that doesn't feel good. And then you can go, yes, but, and then here's this shiny outcome. They're like, holy crap. Like, yeah, maybe, maybe I could change. If it's
Yeah.
kind of like if I had to change my lifestyle and someone said, hey, by the way, you would have a six pack. I'm just making this up. You would have a six pack if you could wake up 2 hours earlier every day. I would probably find a way to wake up 2 hours earlier every day, like to change my behavior for some dramatic result.
So we had a client we were demoing, and in the middle of the demo, she stopped me. She goes, and she gave me these. She goes, "You mean I can do this, 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 and this?" I go, absolutely. That night, they started using the product and doing a POC. Literally that night, they're one of our biggest clients now, and they're using it globally, which is a really cool thing to see.
That's
But
awesome.
the when the light bulb goes off, and we have people that we'll present to people, the light bulb will never go off because they're just used to doing. And
Yep.
I tell my team, look, there are people who get this and there are people who don't. Let's go find the light bulbs because those are the ones who are going to get this thing going.
And this is one of, I'm assuming this is one of those scenarios where it's like, hey, like that's a rejection. The door closed. Instead of trying to beat down the door, hey, look, keep moving. And maybe in the future, that door for them will open up. Maybe it won't, but keep looking for other doors.
That's exactly right, Nick. That's exactly what we do. Hey, they're not interested. Don't waste any more cycles. Go find the yeses, right? Let's get rid of all the no's so we can get to the yeses.
Right. Awesome. I'm doing a time check. I know we've kind of reached our limit. I want to be respectful of your time. If you do have just another minute, my final question
Sure.
that I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about this stuff was, if you're in this position where you're getting user feedback and trying to do what users are asking for, do you find that there's a challenge with uh, doing too specific of asks for users where you have one user that's like, we want this, you go super deep, and then another one, and you're kind of being pulled in too many directions?
Yeah, so what we do, whether it's right or wrong, we listen to everybody and then we make the decision. And
Right.
and some people are going to be happy, some people aren't. But they're also not product developers; they're users. But there are different things that play, different forces at play. One is architecturally, can we actually get this done and not impact the project, right, or the platform? Or how much work is this? Is this going to be one sprint? Is this going to be four sprints? And so we look at a lot of those things, and sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. But you know what? If it doesn't work out, we don't say, well, that was the decision. We fix it. We throw it away and fix it. This particular company, we threw away 3 MVPs before we settled on the platform and the audience we were building for. We started out in weddings, we started out in events, and now we build corporate videos for corporations.
That's awesome.
So
Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for your time. I don't know if you had any sort of closing remarks that you wanted to share with folks, that like words of advice or anything like that.
I think, I think your soft skills piece of it is really what I would tell people, and what I do tell people. It's great to have these skills, but if you can't communicate, if you can't work with a team,
Right.
and if you're afraid of change, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah, I love that. I really appreciate it. And I guess a final note, I'll get links and stuff from you afterwards. We can follow up. But if people are interested in your products and services, where can they check it out?
They can go to lucihub.com, and that's lucihub.com, and they can learn more about it there.
Awesome. Okay.
Or
Well,
they can just go be a great filmmaker on a phone. There's a lot of entrepreneurs who, once they learn to master this thing, won't, they can do their own videos, right? So we have a whole video library out there that's free to everybody.
that's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I think lots of words of wisdom for the audience. So thanks again.
Well, thanks for having me. That was fun.
Awesome.
Reminded me of my engineering.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.